All right. Hi, I'm Taylor. This is original oratory assignment speech panel B event. I am presenting on the American justice system and prison system. It's odd to me how anyone who has done anything wrong is sent to the same place. Obviously, there are different levels of security prisons, but for the most part, petty thieves could be sent in with murderers who could be sent in with marijuana dealers. Think about that for a second. The guy selling a drug that is now legal in 11 states for recreational use and 33 states for medical use is in the same place as the guy who killed his girlfriend. That's insane. One story that demonstrates this the best is that of Jeff Mizensky, sentenced in 1996 for the possession and dealing of 6 pounds of marijuana. He was sentenced to life for this. Even though there was no violent altercation, there was no dealing to minors, just the fact that he already had 2 citations underneath his belt. And in his state of Missouri, that made him eligible for any punishment underneath the death penalty. That's crazy because they did sentence him to life. They sentenced him to life for no violence, no violent altercation. He wasn't dealing to minors. And then on top of that, Missouri made marijuana legal for medical use in 2018 and decriminalized the possession of it in 2014. Luckily for Mizensky, his sentence was lightened, and he was released after 22 years serving in a maximum security prison. He served 2 decades in a maximum security prison because he sold drugs that were made legal. It's crazy. It's crazy because the problem is that the punishment is not equal to the crime. And that is the entire basis of almost every justice system. So when these things don't match up, it is a fundamental problem with the way that your justice system works. If we look throughout our lives, we can even see examples of this ideology. Ever heard of an eye for an eye, or we'll make him pay? It's the idea that if you commit a crime, you must face the consequences and reparations for that. And usually it's by serving your time. But in these cases, the time is much severer than it should be. This severe sentencing isn't the only problem that prisons face today. The biggest problem in prisons is the living conditions. The Penn State blog posts an article accusing a Brooklyn prison of leaving prisoners without heat or electricity during the entire winter. And another one by the Equal Justice Initiative accuses Alabama prisons of being overcrowded and understaffed, leading to violence and fighting in the halls, just inmates on guards, just constant. And this doesn't even account for sexual violence. Think of every vulnerable community you can think of in normal life for sexual violence. I can list a few: women, children, LGBTQ people, and especially women of color. I don't have time to get into that today. That is a whole separate thing, but it is very prevalent. But let's talk about women first. Women make up 10% of the U.S.'s incarcerated population. However, they make up about 35% of all assault allegations, which is insane because there should be none. Inside of women's prisons, derogatory terms and slurs and awful language is used against them constantly, and many of them are forced into participating in sexual actions with male guards at the threat of disciplinary statements being made. These disciplinary statements and records could be used against them in future court hearings and could be used to deny them parole, and so they're forced to do this. That is completely unjust. Earlier this year in April, the Department of Justice posted a report on the Edna Mahan Correctional Facility in New Jersey. This is a women's prison that has been so highly accused of sexual violence that it exceeds constitutional protections and has violated prisoners' Eighth Amendment rights. A similar article was also posted by the Department of Justice in 2014 on Alabama prisons. Another outrageous article is from Oregon, where one male nurse has 8 lawsuits pending against him after being accused of raping, assaulting, abusing, and sodomizing over 15 women while they were in his care. Prisons from California, Connecticut, Vermont, Kansas, Pennsylvania, Missouri, all of these places are just awful. And those are just the ones we know about. Imagine all of the prisons sneaking under all of our lines of sight in all of the other states. It's insane. Children being tried as adults is another large community that is very vulnerable to this violence in prisons. When a juvenile commits a crime, there's often a lot of confusion in the court whether or not to try them as an adult or a child, and those tried as adults often are at much higher risks of sexual violence and just plain violence from guards while they are in prison. An article written in The Nation entitled "Why Americans Don't Care About Prison Rape" puts it the best, stating basically that the beginning of a prison sentence isn't the end of the criminal justice system working. It's the beginning of extended torture, and that's unacceptable. Inside prisons, LGBTQ members, including gays, lesbians, and bisexuals, are often targeted specifically for their sexualities. For example, many sites are dedicated to stating and telling the stories of these inmates. One such story being from Micah from California, who tells about how he had tasers and stun guns used against his genitalia as torture. Another one is from Rodney from Louisiana, who tells about how he was raped and assaulted by inmates and also prostituted around just because he was gay. Completely unacceptable. Inside prisons is another issue, and that I want to briefly touch on is solitary confinement. Solitary confinement is used a lot against prisoners with mental health issues, as guards are under-equipped to deal with this, and they don't really know what to do. So they shove them in a tiny cell and don't let them out. And don't let them out. A lot of times prisoners can stay in solitary confinement for decades, even up to 40 years at one point. And this is awful because this solitary confinement can lead to physical and mental health scars, including dizziness. It can lead to arthritis. It can lead to heart disease because it doesn't allow prisoners the proper amount of physical movement. Also, it leads to hypersensitivity. If you're locked in a cell for years and you're just let out, you're not going to be very open to light and to sounds. All of these things are just combinations and they pile on each other. The last thing I want to touch on today is the fact that prisoners who go to prison are a lot likely to go back once they're released. You would think that, okay, yeah, this is pretty bad, but once they get out, they're free. No. Every year a prisoner spends inside a prison increases their chance of going back to prison once they're released by 6%, because our prisons generally don't rehabilitate. There are so many ways that we could try and rehabilitate prisoners, but we have to start at the core. We have to have better trained guards and focus more on mental health within prisoners and the reason why people are in prison as opposed to just punishing them. And once we get that, then we can really talk about all of these issues and all of these people who are wasting their lives in prison because of a bad decision. Thank you.